I work in one of the twin habitats located on parallel ledges of an underwater gorge. We're just off the east coast of Canada. I know exactly how far, but I don't think I'm allowed to tell that to anyone. Anyway, we're down here for all sorts of reasons. General research is all I can really give away, though. It's some pretty ingenious placement, too. We can focus on the nicely lit seabed outside the gorge, and do tests within it, too. Two birds stoned at once, as they say. So we stay in here for a week at a time. It's a habitat. You can live semi-comfortably in here. It can feel claustrophobic sharing it with 3 other people is all. By the week's end, most of the time I'm thinking about swimming to the surface. That wouldn't go well, though. I don't think I can make it 80 feet in one breath. Day 1 of our most recent leg went well. I had the task of piloting our drone on the seabed. Amy had just got done repairing it. The other team of scientists that had just finished their research stint left it in pretty rough shape, and failed to mention it to anyone. So it was already near the end of the day before I got it out for a spin. "How's it feel?" Amy asked over my shoulder, looking at the feed it was streaming back to us. "Good," I said simply. Didn't feel as good as it used to, though. The controls felt rigid, like when I wanted to veer left or right, I had to oversteer every time. It didn't matter, though. This thing wasn't designed to do Death Star trench runs anyways. It would do. Good. I don't even know how they messed it up that bad. Looked like they just backed into the side of the gorge over and over. She sounded annoyed from behind me, but I had to focus on getting the drone back to the dock without breaking it all over again. I wouldn't put it past Todd. I offered in agreement. Amy stayed perched on my shoulder for a moment, before we heard Dave calling her from the other room. She went to see what Dave needed while I brought the drone back to the base. I figured since it was fixed now, there wasn't really a good reason to bring it back in, so I left it docked outside. I joined Amy and Dave in front of Dave's screen now, both transfixed on it, both with headphones on. Amy took hers off, and Dave slipped one of his ears out to hear. "Nope, never heard a wail like that," she said, shrugging. "Me either. It's really weird. It's down in the gorge somewhere," Dave said, slipping his ear back into the headphones. He leaned in close to his screen as the playback looped over the wavelength. Amy looked at me. "You want to hear?" she asked me, holding the headphones towards me. I shook my head and scowled. "You two are the animal guys. If you don't know what it is, no way I could." I shrugged now too. "It's interesting though, if you guys don't know. It's fucking weird, that's what it is." Dave mumbled incredulously as he rested his neck on the heel of his hand. We didn't get much time to theorize about the sound though. We all caught something out of the corner of our eye, out of the main window of the habitat. Or rather, the lack of something. Like I said, we have a sister habitat on the other side of the gorge. We can usually see it, since the gorge is only about 500 feet wide. But it was late now. The ocean gets really dark when the sun's not out. Luckily, each habitat is equipped with 10 floodlights. They can extend out into the water on metal arms, and you can bend and control them from inside the habitat. Really handy on a lot of stuff that we do. No matter how dark it gets down there, we can always see the lights of the other lab. Until we couldn't. They all just went out. That's not supposed to happen. We all just kind of looked into the void of the nighttime ocean for a few seconds, expecting the lights to come back on. They didn't. Amy was the first one to speak up. "What are they doing over there?" Dave and I stayed silent, sure the lights were going to come back on any second. They didn't. "Do they need help?" she asked, worry more prevalent in her voice this time. "They would have called on the VLF if anything went wrong," I responded. "They have a battery life too, so if the power failed, they'd still be able to talk to us," I told her. It wasn't anything she didn't already know. I glanced towards the VLF radio, hoping it would go off. Even if their VLF was fucked, they'd all know the emergency pattern to flash with floodlights. Dave intervened. More silence, staring into the void in front of us. Does the emergency pattern start with over a minute of no lights at all? I asked, trying to add some levity. It didn't work. It doesn't, Dave said, deadpanned, still staring ahead. I shrugged. We were probably all overreacting. These things were state-of-the-art, bleeding-edge technology. We had stuff on there that I'm pretty sure none of us were smart enough to work. I sauntered over to the radio, just beyond the small door frame into the next room, sure that there would be a reasonable explanation on the other end. Hey guys, Hab 1 over here. Just wondering why you turned out your lights. Everything okay? I spoke into the radio, making sure to be loud enough so Dave and Amy could hear me. I waited a moment for an answer. Nothing. Another moment. Dave and Amy joined me in the side room. Still nothing. Hab 2, do you read? I asked, voice still calm, but I think my body language was giving it away. I was concerned. You on the right channel? Amy asked. These things only have 2 channels, one for the other Hab and one for HQ. Either one should have gotten back to us right away. Dave frowned at her. I looked down on the radio. I was on the right channel. Hab 2, do you read? I asked again, this time louder. I put the mouthpiece down. What's the protocol here? I asked. Janet was in charge, but she had been asleep for the last few hours. She wasn't feeling well, apparently. Dave went to wake her up without another word. It took a minute or two to explain it to her, but she realized the severity of the situation right away. We could be in the crucial moments of saving lives here, people. Radio HQ and get them to get a boat and rescue team out here immediately, Jane demanded. She had a military background. She wasn't much if she wasn't a woman of action. I switched over to the other channel. No, Mike, you come with me. Amy, call base, she instructed as she entered back into the hub room of the lab. We walked quietly towards the drone console. Good idea, I agreed without her having to explain it to me. I took my seat at the controls of the drone and flicked them on. I'd swim over there myself if it wasn't past dark, or even if the lights were still on over there. I could hear her scowling at safety protocol through her teeth, even though I was focused on getting the drone fired up. Not an option, Cap. You know how easy it is to get disoriented in dark water, I sighed as I undocked the drone. I turned it to face the gorge and started the trip forward. The drone had floodlights of its own, not as powerful as the ones on the Hab, though. Still, I'd be able to see a few feet in front of me at least. Not that there would be anything to see while I was over the gorge. Like I mentioned earlier, this thing wasn't a Corvette. It was going to take a few minutes to get all the way over to Hab 2. I didn't get that far into our trip before Amy and Dave came back into the hub room. Hey Cap, turns out I think it's our end of the VLF that's on the fritz. Can't get through to HQ either, Amy explained. The pit in my stomach seemed to get lighter. It was a good sign after all. At least they didn't turn the lights off and then not answer. I'm already taking a look at it. I just wanted you to know, Amy finishing before returning to the radio room. Janet didn't say anything, and Dave sat down at our Hab's light control in the hub area with us. On the drone screen, I could see Dave extending the Hab's floodlight arms out above the gorge as far as they could go, doing his best to help the drone along the way. Thanks, man, I offered from across the room. No response from Dave. This thing was painfully slow when we were just doing research with it. Piloting it, when it seemed like there was some unknown timer ticking down, made it seem all the slower. All I could do was hold forward. Another minute or so, and I was out past the helpful illumination of the Hab lights. And I was on my own. Well, the drone was at least. I got about halfway to the other Hab before I noticed the nose of the drone wanted to naturally start dipping down pretty significantly. Maybe Amy would have to take another look at it. The rest of the trip was pretty easy going once I got used to that, but the pit in my stomach was heavier and heavier the closer I got. Even if we couldn't see the floodlights, eventually their normal indoor hab lights should have been visible. Even if they all turned in early for the night, there are some lights in the hab we literally can't turn off. We'd been getting close at this point, definitely close enough to see their indoor lights. But nothing, followed by more nothing. Do I look like I'm in line with Hab 2, Dave? I looked over my shoulder to Dave staring out the main window. The floodlights on the drone were less powerful, but you could see the smaller dim lights in the distance across the gorge. Yeah, looks dead on to me. Dave called over his own shoulder. Shit. Janet stayed quiet, but I could feel her intensity behind me, like a kettle about to whistle. I held forward on the drone for another few moments, and was finally met with the hull of the other hab. I let out a giant sigh. I'd started holding my breath at some point, I guess. I had gone a little off course, so I would have to do a little maneuvering to get to the other hab's main window. Janet's silent intensity was now only amplified as Dave joined her in watching the drone stream. It was as I feared. I found the main window and saw that the inside of the hab was pitch black. The only thing that illuminated it were the floodlights of the drone. The drone could light most of the hub area while it was just floating there. Everything looked to be in order. It was just dark. Total power failure. It's the only thing it could be. The captain spoke up. They've got a functioning VLF and plenty of air until a team can come pick them up. Janet nodded to herself. This is good news, she sighed. I couldn't bring myself to join her in relaxation. But where are they? I asked her as I turned the drone to shine in one of the back corners towards the VLF room. She stuttered, looking for an answer. Wouldn't they want to be seen by the drone, so they could show us they're all right? I finished my thought as I wheeled the drone over to look at the other corner of the hub room. What the fuck is going on here? Dave cracked as he turned back to look out the main window. Maybe they all went out in their suits to see if they could fix something on the outside? He added. Janet shook her head. Bill is the only one over there that can even have a chance at fixing something like this. There's no reason for all of them to go out. Her voice was weaker than I had ever heard it before. Drive that fucking drone around the back of the hab, she snapped as she looked back at me. I spun my chair back around and did as she said. Dave took a seat over at the sonar console and watched from afar. Nothing. Everything seemed ordinary. No breaches, no dead bodies floating in the water. I was at a loss. Janet finally left her perch on my shoulder, storming over to the other room. Amy better have that VLF working, she muttered as she went. Dave and I sat in silence. I leaned back in my chair and spun around to face him again. I don't know what's going on. I stammered halfway through my sentence, seeing that Dave was once again turned around at his sonar console, headphones on. He slipped an ear out again. Hey, Mike? Remember that whale Amy and I couldn't figure out? He stared at the new waveforms on his dashboard. It just got a lot louder. And, he continued. I stood up in my chair. I think it just said something.